What it do, cuckolds? It's your boy, the hater, up in this piece. I got my new mic set up, and I've made it so I can walk around while I talk, which is actually pretty amazing because the hater likes to walk around when he talks. Hence why we sometimes do hater outdoors. But today, it's hater at home, cucks, and we got a video to talk about. Obviously, it's going to be the Monday Night Raw review. Let's get to it. And as we do it segment by segment. All right. Like a little prelude here. This show, for what it was pretty good. I'm not going to lie. I actually enjoyed this episode of Raw. So let's get to it. Obviously, the show opens up as it does every week with everybody coming in. You know, Stephanie Vaquero looks great. Logan Paul is shredded, and everyone else looks like a regular person. You know what I mean? They don't look like superstars at all. At least Stephanie Vaquero is good looking and has like a superstar aura. Logan Paul is a superstar because he's got millions of followers, meaning that he's big time. I mean, I'm not saying he's, especially talented or anything like that, but he is a big deal, right? And also he looks the part. He's just completely shredded, Like very few people currently in the WWE have like that level of a physique, which is, kind of a shame, right? Obviously, you've got your Randy Ortons, your Braun Breakers, you got a few people, but for the vast majority of them, you got a bunch of people that are like on the JD McDonough level, on that level, maybe like on the Xavier Woods level, nothing crazy. But anyways, that's just how that goes down. So now we move on to the first segment. The first segment we were promised is going to be Paul Heyman and his new group, whatever the hell they call themselves, explaining why they did what they did. This segment was atrocious. One reason and one reason only. Nobody explained anything, motherfucks. Anyways, Paul Heyman comes out. He's introduced as being in the Hall of Fame, which in my opinion is strange because he's an active manager who will probably be around for a while. I mean, I don't see Paul Heyman like just stopping anytime soon, especially with this storyline, So I don't know why he's already in the Hall of Fame. It would have been better when he retired. But whatever, He, Seth, and Braun come out, like I said, to explain their actions. But number one, I don't know what there is to explain. Like, Seth Rollins explained everything before WrestleMania, He explained that he was going to be the future and that he was going to kick Roman and CM Punk's asses. So that's how that went down. But now they're going to come and explain it again. Basically, Seth Rollins says, I'm the future. He's been saying this for about 15 years, so I don't really know what the point of this is. Then Sami Zayn comes out like a busybody, He's like Mr. Miyagi from Karate Kid, like shit's going down around him. It's a bunch of kids bullying another kid, and like the busybody, Mr. Miyagi, just appears out of nowhere and just interferes with everybody's business, Like, except obviously Sami Zayn isn't as cool or charismatic as Mr. Miyagi. But anyways, he comes out and basically, in my opinion, just this segment demotes Braun Breaker into an underling, right? Braun Breaker is someone that should be able to destroy Sami Zayn. More on that a little bit later, to be fair. But now he comes out and like Sami Zayn is basically starting a feud with Seth Rollins, it would seem, right? And Seth Rollins is clearly the head of this, faction, and Braun Breaker is the lackey. So it's kind of like, if Kane were to be feuding with Triple H or something, right? And then it's like on a random Raw, it'll be like Kane versus Batista, or Kane versus Orton. And it's like, we're matching Kane up with Triple H, which means Kane should have no problems going through Randy Orton or Batista. But anyways, that comes down and he comes out and basically says Seth Rollins must have been jealous of Roman Reigns and that he's a hypocrite. Unfortunately, Sami Zayn is right. One thing that hasn't happened here, and the central problem with the Rollins faction, is that Rollins, in my opinion, hasn't presented an argument as to why he deserves to be the future and all that jazz, right? Like, basically, he just says, like, Roman Reigns isn't good enough and neither is CM Punk, but for some reason, he is, right? Now, personally, I am compelled by the underpinnings because the idea is Roman Reigns never shows up. CM Punk is a cuck who left. Seth Rollins has picked up the ball and is running with it, right? And it should be him. But it should be him what? Like, just think about it. If CM Punk had won, or even Roman Reigns had won the quote-unquote fake main event at Mania, like Seth Rollins could easily just still do what he's doing, right? He could still recruit Braun Breaker and go with Heyman and just start the faction like on the new season. You know what I mean? Maybe you could make the argument that if he didn't win, Braun Breaker would want to align himself with him. But Braun Breaker is not being presented as an intelligent guy. He's just an underling. You know, he might be an intelligent guy later on, but right now he's just a follower, so it doesn't really matter. You know, Seth Rollins already has had factions. You know, remember when he had like Buddy Murphy and like AOP? Like he's done this before. So there's nothing really new here. Now he just has Paul Heyman, and therefore this becomes a main event type faction, right? But I will say this. I want to give a chance to this faction, right? Because at the very least, there's something going on, right? Like if you compare this faction to, let's say, Judgment Day, you know, obviously this faction is far more interesting. So as a result, I haven't written them off yet. You know, I'm sure I will in the next couple of weeks. But as of now, this is entertaining, right? Rollins then offers Sami Zayn the opportunity to leave Raw. And Sami Zayn just looks dumbfounded. And that's it. Basically, he's like, don't threaten me. Da, da, da. Segment was very, very bad. Next up, we get Rhea Ripley versus Roxanne Perez. This gets out of control eventually, and it's thrown out when Julia comes out and attacks Rhea Ripley. You know what I mean? Julia looks like the girl from Horizon Zero Dawn. You know what I mean? Io Sky then comes up and beats that ass, saving Rhea. Nobody cares. She eventually gets her ass handed to her as well. Rhea comes back and the NXT jobbers run away. Rhea's music plays for no reason whatsoever in the end, right? Even though like the segment was her getting her ass kicked, she didn't win the match. I mean, technically, I guess she won by DQ, so that might be the explanation. But I feel like even if Rhea Ripley was the one that had the Io Sky role, meaning that let's say this was Io Sky versus Roxanne and Rhea Ripley came to save the day, like Rhea Ripley's music would play in the end anyways, right? No matter what happens, Rhea Ripley's music plays in the end. You could have like John Cena versus like the returning, you know, Bob Holly, and like for some reason Rhea Ripley's music is going to play. But anyways, that went down. Nobody cared. Judgment Day segment next. Finn and JD talk. Basically, the new storyline, if you will, is that Finn is being left out of the loop. You know, whatever. That's not really like an impressive storyline, but basically, Finn and JD have a match against the War Raiders. The winners get a become the number one contenders to the New Day. It seems like, I don't know, right? They weren't really clear about it. After this, Logan Paul comes out and runs down the crowd. He does a pretty good job on the mic. Jey Uso comes out, and basically his new thing now is that since he became champion, he's like reinvigorated. A new fire has lit within him, and this fire will never fade out, right? This actually was kind of fun, only because Jey Uso was so much more high energy this week than he normally is, which is saying a lot because he's usually pretty high energy, right? But it's almost like he believed it, right? In other words, Jey Uso, the character, or the guy that plays Jey Uso, he is playing along with the notion that now Jey Uso is like the best he's ever been. You see what I'm saying? So that's kind of fun because it shows that, like, you know, there was a development in the character. For better or for worse, that's what happened, motherfucks. Logan Paul basically is going to be the first guy to challenge Jey Uso. I'm actually okay with this. You know what I mean? I have no problem with Jey Uso defending against Logan Paul, primarily because, like, you know, Jey Uso, I think we all know, is not going to be this, like, long-term champion, right? So, you know, at any given moment, he could lose the title, and Logan Paul represents an overcomable challenge, right? So, like, Jey Uso can and probably will beat Logan Paul to defend his title at least one time, right? But it wouldn't be crazy if Logan Paul won. It would be very unlikely, but it wouldn't be crazy, right? That's the good thing about a Jey Uso title run, right? A Jey Uso title run is great because Jey Uso at any given moment could lose, you know? And that makes it exciting. That makes his matches entertaining. Whereas, like, when Gunther wins the title, you're like, oh, fuck. Now we gotta wait for another, like, you know, 8 months at least until this motherfucker drops it. So it's like the next 2 or 3 months for sure are a complete waste of time. Same thing with Cody Rhodes. After he won the title against Roman Reigns, it's like the next feud he had was with, like, AJ Styles, I think. And it's like, you know that AJ Styles has absolutely zero chance in winning this because you know Cody's going to get, like, you know, a title run that's worth talking about, you know, in the future. So there you have it, right? After this, Jey Uso, I don't know if I said it, but he super kicks Logan Paul, which pretty much cements the idea that, like, he doesn't give a fuck. Like, you know, he's now, like, on top and he's going to act like he's on top. Then we had a very, very entertaining match. It's been a long time since I was this entertained. It was War Raiders versus Judgment Day. And like, I'm not joking. I'm being completely honest. The match was whatever. I couldn't give a rat's ass about the match. But the New Day was on commentary, and the New Day is excellent on commentary. Like, clearly Xavier Woods of the three New Day guys is the one that I think is the most confident in his abilities to speak. But he, ironically, is, in my opinion, the third best speaker of New Day. Like, I think Big E's above him, and clearly Kofi Kingston is extremely underrated on the microphone. He's underrated because he's never been given this opportunity. But Kofi Kingston is naturally hilarious. I really enjoyed everything he said. Xavier Woods too, but Kofi just stole the show. Some highlights include great lines, like when Woods says about Ivar, he says, it's impressive because he's fat, which made me laugh because it's 100% true. You know, there's something to be said about that. You know, like, this is just a joke, it's a throwaway comment, but there is a truth to it, right? Sometimes they'll have people like Samoa Joe, Oba Femi, you know, Jacob Fatu, Ivar, basically like fat people, right? They get these fat guys, and they're like, this guy shouldn't be able to move this way, right? But then when you look at what they actually do, it's not that impressive, right? As we saw in this match. For example, you have Jacob Fatu, he does the double bounce moonsault, right? That's pretty impressive, but he's presented as being 280. He's probably like 230 in real life, right? Ivar is clearly much bigger than him. Ivar could easily be 100 pounds more impressive. 100 pounds heavier than Jacob Fatu. But when he does the doomsault, it's not presented as if it's like this incredible feat of athleticism, even though he's far more athletic than Jacob Fatu, right? He can do cartwheels, he can do spin kicks. Jacob Fatu, all he does is the moonsault. Right? Everything else that he does is like a Gangrel level move, you know? Like, it's moves that Gangrel did. Like, even the Impaler DDT, you know? Jacob Fatu doesn't do anything impressive except for the moonsault. But as we could see, Ivar, far fatter than him, can do it. But at the same time, it's like, it's just a moonsault, right? Everyone does the moonsault. Like, Tiffany Stratton does the moonsault that Jacob Fatu does, right? And Xavier Woods made a good point. He's like, oh, it's impressive because he's fat, right? It's like, if you weren't fat, this wouldn't be impressive. You know what I mean? Like, if he was someone that's like in really good shape, like Ricochet, for example, who is probably like 190, 195, because he's like a lot of lean muscle there, or like a Will Ospreay, they do like things that are 100 times more impressive, but because they're not fat, like, they're the same size as Jacob Fatu, except for the fact that Jacob Fatu is fat. That's the only difference, right? If you look at Will Ospreay, he's like 6'2", Jacob Fatu is like 6'1", right? Maybe they're both 6'2", right? Will Ospreay can do like a quadruple moonsault, and it's just like routine. But because Jacob Fatu just eats more, right? He does far less impressive things, but it's presented as if he's doing like the spiral tap, you know? This was great. Kofi Kingston was out there as well, just burying these jobbers, right? He's basically saying like, they got to do this, they got to do that. You know, they're not going to win the match if they do this. He's like, they're dumb. You know what I mean? Like, he's like, we beat their ass. Because Michael Cole is saying all these like platitudes that he's like used to saying, like, are you afraid of like, you know, War Raiders? And then Kofi Kingston's like, why would we be afraid of them? We just beat them at WrestleMania. You know, which is a good counter argument. This was just great. I really enjoyed this. It was very entertaining. After this, the match continues. There's a part where Kofi Kingston catches Finn, who is thrown at him by Ivar, right? Finn Balor is like 150 pounds at most. Kofi Kingston just manhandles him, even though he's not supposed to. He just grabs him, you know? And he just holds him there like it's nothing, you know what I mean? And Kofi Kingston is not this like big, strong guy. Kofi Kingston is a regular dude. Like, if you saw Kofi Kingston and Finn Balor at the gym, you'd be like, oh, these guys like are in really good shape. But that's it. You wouldn't be like, these are the strongest guys in the gym. You wouldn't think they're super athletes, because they're not. It's as simple as that, you know? And this was evidenced by the fact that Finn Balor is 150 pounds. He just gets caught by Kofi Kingston, and then the War Raiders wipe them out. The War Raiders win after Penta comes and attacks JD McDonough. Carlito throws an apple in the ring. There's a lot of shit going on in this match, but it was very enjoyable. This was a classic Raw tag match, right? This wouldn't be a pay-per-view level match, but it's an acceptable and even above acceptable Raw match, right? After this, we see another segment where Heyman and Sammy are talking. Braun is demanding a title match, not a title match, a match against Sammy, and Paul Heyman tells him basically that if he switches shows, Sami Zayn will get the winner of Cena versus Orton, right? So in other words, why the fuck wouldn't he switch shows? You know what I mean? Like, what are your options? You could go become the number one contenders with the real title, or you can aspire to be a mid-card jobber on Raw, right? SmackDown is clearly the A show at this point, right? It's the show that has Cena and Orton, whereas like Raw has Seth Rollins. You know what I mean? Like, SmackDown is the A show. It's the Cena show, you know? So there you have it. It is what it is, but that's how that went down. You know what I mean? Sami Zayn is still going to contemplate about it, and we'll see what happens. Becky Lynch comes out and cuts a great promo. I can't believe I'm saying it, but it was actually entertaining. She starts out by saying that, she's like, I figured out who attacked Bayley. I did all the work. She's like, we don't have to wait and do it's almost like kind of making fun of the Jade Cargill situation. She's like, we don't have to wait forever. She's like, I know who did it. It was me, right? It was a great little reveal. She goes ham. She starts yelling and screaming about how Becky Lynch has been attacking her for 6 years, basically, and that Lyra Valkyria has already been tainted just by her association with Bayley. Lyra comes out, and we have to tolerate a promo from her, which wasn't nearly as good, but she did make some points, and she didn't stumble her words, so this was also acceptable. Lyra Valkyria basically says that she's better than Becky because she beat her last time. They set up a match. It goes to, Backlash. Backlash is historically one of my favorite pay-per-views because it's like the fallout of WrestleMania, right? It's like the beginning of a new season, and it's like the big arc is determined either before or during Backlash, So I look forward to Backlash every year. This is going to be pretty good. It's shaping up to be pretty decent. I mean, just Cena versus Orton automatically is a much better match than anything we're going to see at Mania, right? It's a much bigger match. Like, it should have been the other way around. It should have been Cena and Orton at Mania. Imagine Cena turns heel on Orton. You know what I mean? Like, imagine if the whole storyline was done with Orton instead of Cody, where The Rock says, Orton, I want your soul, right? And it's a little bit different. The implications automatically become a bit different because Orton is a more decorated wrestler than The Rock, right? So whereas Cody Rhodes isn't, and Cody Rhodes should be looking up to The Rock, Orton can easily say, I don't look up to The Rock. Orton is also bigger than The Rock, right? I mean, like, perhaps not size-wise, but he's definitely taller. Like, I would probably pick Orton to beat The Rock up in a fight, you know what I mean? Especially now when The Rock's like in his 50s, And like, if you've guys seen those workout videos where The Rock is like lifting like extremely low weight, he's not nearly as strong as people think. But anyways, it's not here or there. Like, it's like, there's a difference in presence, right? Like, The Rock can look down on Cody Rhodes. Like, he can just look down on him because he's so much cooler. Orton, he's also cooler than Orton, but it's closer, right? So Orton can be like, shut the fuck up before I punt you in the head, you know what I mean? Because I'm fucking Randy Orton. Don't forget that. You know what I mean? It's just like back in the Attitude Era where, for example, like, I don't know, like, for example, Triple H could look down on someone like JBL, right? The Rock could look down on someone like Jericho or Albert or even Kurt Angle. The Rock could look down on someone like Kurt Angle. But The Rock would never be able to look down on someone like The Undertaker or Kane just because of their presence alone. But it would have been better because it would have just been more big time. Anyways, after this, Nick says that it'll be Penta versus JD in a backstage segment. Chad comes to talk to Penta, runs him down. Penta kicks Chad and calls him a pendejo. You know what I mean? This reminds me of my story arc that I want to do one day. If I ever have the capacity to book anything in wrestling, I would just have a female wrestler called La Puta, right? Her gimmick is that she's just like some prostitute from Tijuana. And then eventually, like, she's not important to the story. Eventually, we reveal her son, Hijo de Puta. You know what I'm saying? And that guy becomes the next Rey Mysterio. That's how I envision it. Anyways, then we see a Rusev promo. Basically, this is a, I'm back and I'm different promo, right? We've seen this 100 times from 100 wrestlers. It almost never leads to anything. Basically, Rusev is basically saying, in my opinion, bad things because he's like, I'm not going to fight for a woman that isn't mine, and I'm not going to raise the flag of a country that isn't mine, right? Which is ridiculous because it's like, those are the things that made him interesting. Him being a Russian, like, subservient, married to, like, basically Ivan Drago's wife, him being like an Ivan Drago is what made him interesting, Rusev by himself is not interesting. Rusev by himself is the same thing as Vladimir Kozlov or as Gunther. It's the same fucking thing. It's just this weird European type, right? That we're supposed to believe is better than everybody else because they're European. At least Rusev looks the part. Like, he looks like he would tear Gunther apart in 3 seconds, But it is what it is. Basically, he's saying that he's done with the gimmick. He's just here to kick ass, which is never a recipe for success. If you couldn't succeed with a fucking WrestleMania, essentially main event against Cena with a tank, you're not going to succeed as Rusev, the guy who's back to hurt people. He says he's going to hurt people, right? At the very least, have him come out and deliver this in person. That is a surefire way to know that whatever plan they have for Rusev is not going to be a big deal, right? Just think about it. When someone makes an impact, they show up on Raw, The people that don't make enough of an impact don't show up on Raw, and the people that are too important also don't show up on Raw. So Rusev is like somewhere, like, he's going to end up in like a Chad Gable level on the card, right? He's not going to be anything important. He's going to just be there Hopefully he wrestles a lot because he at least has fun matches, but he's never going to be a big deal, in my opinion. And that's another thing. Like, people always say, like, wow, this guy's going to be a big deal. And it's like, how many times do people have to be wrong, right? Like, I remember there was a part on Raw today where Carlito says, we're all going to be champions. And he's like, maybe Carlito should be champion, right? And I'm like, man, remember when Carlito was gone? And like, people were like, wow, WWE really needs to sign Carlito back. The main event scene could use some talent, right? Like, people thought that Carlito left as a basically like a lower mid-carder. He was a lower mid-carder, maybe even an undercard guy when he was teaming with Epico or Primo, whoever the fuck he was teaming with, right? Like, he left like that. People were like, he's going to come back as a main eventer. And you're like, I mean, yeah, he could, like Drew McIntyre did, Cookie Rhodes did, but more likely than not, he's going to come back exactly where he was, a jobber. But people thought he was going to be this massive deal, Carlito. People think Rusev's going to be a massive deal. People think Aleister Black is going to be a massive deal. People think Obafemi's going to be a massive deal, or Trick Williams, or Tony D'Angelo. And the fact of the matter is, none of these guys are going to be massive deals. So anyways, that went down. It was what it was. After this, we had Ivy Nile versus Stephanie Vaquer. Stephanie Vaquer is obviously going to win. During this match, I couldn't help but think if Ivy Nile has ever won a match on Raw. I don't think she's won anything ever. Like, Ivy Nile is like one of the biggest jobbers of all time. So this is no different. She has a competitive match with Stephanie Vaquer. Vaquer does like the devil's kiss, and Michael Cole brings up Booker T. Now, I want to take a moment to make a point here, right? Number one, we get it. Booker T likes the move because she's shaking her ass effectively, right? Good for Booker T, and I think that's fine on NXT. But you don't have to just bring that up every time. Number two, Booker T, in my opinion, doesn't get the credit he deserves as one of the, I'm going to say it, motherfucks, as one of the best announcers of all time. Now, I know some of you are thinking, what are you talking about, hater? He doesn't know the names of the moves. First of all, he kind of does. Second of all, even though he gets confused sometimes because that's not his trade, like, he's not a broadcaster, right? So he's not as good as like Michael Cole at keeping pace, or as JR at keeping pace. But in my opinion, I think that Booker T's better. He's not as good as JR, obviously, but he's better than Michael Cole. Because one thing that JR did, King did, Booker T did, and even like other people in the indies like Don West did, right? Booker T is the only guy in WWE who does this now. He actually not puts people over, because anyone can do that. Like, whatever the fuck, like Samantha Irvin put over like Chelsea Green's name, right? But like, she also got it over, and Booker T gets people over, right? People forget that the announcer isn't just there to tell you what's happening. The announcer is there to tell you what's good and why it's good. So Booker T, for example, getting over Trick Williams. Like, Trick Williams would never have gotten over. He never would have had the opportunities that he has if it weren't for Booker T. Booker T is instrumental in getting him over by singing along to his otherwise mediocre entrance music. Same thing. Booker T got over Stephanie Vaquer's move, right? Because if some girl is doing a move with sexual implications where her ass is bouncing up and down, right? Like, you could have Michael Cole, and he'd be like, what unique offense by Stephanie Vaquer? And then after 10 years, he'd be like, vintage Stephanie Vaquer. Booker T pretends he's having an orgasm effectively, right? Which is hilarious, and he gets the people invested in the move. Not because the move is that impressive, because we've seen other women do that move. But the reason why it's over when Stephanie Vaquer does it is because Booker T reacts. So it's like when you're watching NXT and you see Stephanie Vaquer do the move, you don't even care about the move. You're just waiting for Booker T's reaction, right? That's why a lot of people, the smart ones, are saying, like, if Trick Williams is going to be in the main roster, you need Booker T on commentary. Otherwise, no one's going to give a fuck, because Trick Williams is not interesting. Booker T makes him interesting. And that's why, in my personal opinion, Booker T is like GOAT on the announce desk. In my opinion, if he continues for another 10, 20 years, right, you would have a legitimate argument that Booker T should be a Hall of Fame announcer, which would make him a 3-time Hall of Fame inductee, sucker. But anyways, that went down. In the back, we see Nick and AJ are talking, and Dom comes in with Liv. This was actually pretty fun. Dom says he wants time off because he's the champ, right? Clearly, Dom has been watching Raw and SmackDown over the last few years where the champions don't show up. And then Nick Aldis just lies and says that champs work more. It's a complete lie. We know for a fact they don't. Dominic Mysterio has worked more than everyone in the 2 WrestleMania main events combined. Like, he's had more matches than, like, maybe except for Rollins, because he's been doing some stuff. But I think this year, Dom has had more matches than Rollins, CM Punk, Roman Reigns, Cena, and Cody Rhodes combined. You know what I mean? Like, or at least it's close. So Dominic is 100% right in this like observation that as a champion, he can do whatever the fuck he wants because that's the storyline that WWE has run with this entire time, right? After this, Sami Zayn, once again, this is like the third, fourth time this fuck is showing up on one show, which normally I like. And that's actually one of the things I like the most about this episode was the follow-through. This episode itself told a story. Now, the story wasn't interesting, but it's a step in the right direction. Because generally speaking, up until now, for the last 5-6 years, since the hater has been doing this basically, the flow of an episode of Raw or SmackDown has pretty much been unilateral. What happens is there's a segment, and then that segment has no bearing on anything else. So like, they'll have like a match, or it'll be like Jimmy Uso versus like, I don't know, let's say El Grande Americano, right? And then that's it. Like, you're done with Jimmy Uso and El Grande Americano for the rest of the night. This episode was similar to an Attitude Era episode, right? Where the show starts out with, let's say, Triple H, and the show ends with Triple H. This is what happened in this episode. The show started out with Seth Rollins, and in the end, Seth Rollins closed the show. This is a normal thing in shows, right? Because the show has to have a main character. There has to be an arc within an arc. In other words, there has to be some sort of overarching or overarching storyline, right? Like, for example, what the hell is Seth Rollins doing with Paul Heyman and Braun Breaker? That can be the overarching storyline. But within that storyline, we also need moments, right, where we have Seth Rollins showing up there, and Seth Rollins basically says, look at me, I'm Seth Rollins. Today, my goal is X. And then throughout the episode, he works towards that goal. The goal of this episode was to get Sami Zayn to move from Raw to SmackDown. Is it a fun goal? No. Is it entertaining? No. But is it a goal? Yes. Now imagine if this was done with something that is entertaining. That'd be very compelling. However, they chose to go with Sami Zayn, So now we have to see Sami Zayn 4 times, which pretty much deletes everything I just said. Sami Zayn is out there, Karrion Kross comes out and tries to tell them that, to be evil. This Karrion Kross thing, like, it would be interesting if, for example, the New Day acknowledged that Karrion Kross was instrumental in then turning heel. That'd be pretty cool, right? But they don't. They just, like, ignore the fact that Karrion Kross is involved. So Karrion Kross says, look, man, blah, 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 blah. The only thing of note here was that Karrion Kross's hair was not straightened this week like a 20-year-old girl. So I actually like that. I don't find it to be very masculine to straighten one's hair. Now, Karrion Kross is naturally a very masculine guy. He's got masculine features. He's big and strong looking. He's got the tattoos, But sometimes he femmes himself up, and I don't understand why. I think it's to his detriment. But anyways, we'll move on from that. After this, we get what I'm sure a lot of people are going to love about this week, but I fucking hated it with every fiber of my being. This was my least favorite part of the week, of Raw, I should say. They show the Gunther segment from last week where he beats the shit out of Pat McAfee. Pat gets on the announce desk and says people forgot who Pat is. He puts himself over for like 3 minutes. Like he's some sort of big deal. Now, I know Pat McAfee had a mediocre career as a punter. I mean, okay, he had a good career as a punter, but he's a punter. Like, name 3 punters. Exactly, you fucking can't. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's certain positions in sports that are relevant in the context of the game, but that nobody cares about, right? In football, we care primarily about the quarterback, the running back, and then once in a while, a wide receiver. Once in a while, in football, there will be like a linebacker that like is noteworthy, like Luke Kuechly, for example, or like a tackle, some sort of tackle position, like J.J. Watt, you know what I mean? Like these types of people that stand out so much that you can't deny them, right? Otherwise, you need to be in one of the key positions. Nobody gives a flying fuck if you're like the third receiver or if you're like the free safety, you know what I mean? Unless you stand out big time, right? So, but sure as shit, nobody cares about the punter. So Pat McAfee, I'm not even sure how he got famous. I think it's because he started his podcast/radio show, which, whether I give a flying fuck or not, it is a big deal, right? Like it's gotten him a lot of opportunities. Then what I didn't like is when Pat McAfee starts saying that he hasn't been given much. Now, okay, I can accept the fact that Pat McAfee had some athletic abilities, which led him to having an NFL career for like 10, 15 years, right? He became a millionaire from that. Good for him. I respect that. I got nothing against that. However, here's the problem, cuckwads. The idea behind this, in my personal opinion, is that Pat McAfee then pretends that all this success is a consequence of his hard work. But the reality is, the things that we see, in other words, his WWE success, most certainly is not, right? It absolutely is not part of his success. He didn't like just,
work hard to be good in WWE. He's been given a million opportunities. For example, he's the only announcer I can ever think of that was given the opportunity to cut a promo by standing on the desk, right? He leaves for like 3 months. They do like a farewell tour. Every week, they promote some other horse shit that he's trying out. This is not a balanced relationship. WWE is subservient to Pat McAfee. Like, they get almost nothing out of him, right? And and he gets everything out of them. He gets promotion. He gets like the ability to have matches whenever the fuck he wants. He comes and goes as he pleases, etc., etc., etc. Cuckwads. Now, here's the truth, right? I'm sure he is hardworking in the sense that, like, they're in Kansas City, Missouri. Maybe now he has to fly back to wherever the fuck his show is from, Pittsburgh, to his studio, or maybe he has another studio. I don't know, right? But the point is, I'm sure he travels a lot. But hardworking? Like, I don't think he's hardworking at WWE. As a matter of fact, during the New Day match, or the match where New Day was doing commentary, like Kofi Kingston and Xavier were like, Kofi Kingston was like, Pat, you're still learning. You know what I mean? Like, Kofi Kingston today, motherfucks, spoke for the people. He spoke for the hater, So anyways, Pat McAfee says he wants to beat the shit out of Gunther. Now I'm thinking to myself, obviously, the first thing I think of is this. Gunther is not like, he's not like Garza, right? He's not Humberto Carrillo. He's not Berto, right? He's not Adam Cole even. If Pat McAfee has a beef with Santos Escobar, no problem. Absolutely no problem. He can go. He can even be put over Santos Escobar. No problem. Who gives a shit about Santos Escobar? Santos Escobar has been stealing from this company for like 3 years. Maybe like before 3 years, he like drew one dime. But he's been stealing from this company. He sucks. So I don't care if Pat McAfee beats him. Now, I don't like Gunther, so I don't give a shit if Gunther loses. But Gunther, nevertheless, was the World Heavyweight Champion last week, motherfucks. 1 week or 2 weeks ago, he was the World Heavyweight Champion. Like 8 days ago, he was the World Heavyweight Champion. So to have an announcer, like, challenge him, I don't care if Gunther destroys Pat McAfee, as he should, right? Because surely Pat McAfee cannot put on a better effort against Gunther than Jimmy Uso, right? Whose twin brother is the champion now, right? Whose twin brother destroyed Gunther. Surely that can't be what they do. But that they probably will. The point is, Pat McAfee up in this mug, you know what I mean? Pat McAfee is standing toe-to-toe with Gunther one way or another. One way or another, like I just said, Pat McAfee has the balls to challenge the former World Heavyweight Champion. This would be like when Kane lost the title. Imagine if Jimmy, what am I, a fucking asshole? Jerry the King Lawler. Imagine if Jerry the King Lawler the next night just like decided to like stand up to Kane if Kane like attacks JR, right? And if he did, Kane would just destroy him immediately, right? And that would be it. The next week, King and JR would be trying their best to move away from having any beef with these people, including the Dudleys, you know what I mean? Like, the Dudleys are like just a tag team, But imagine if Jerry the King Lawler decided to stand up to Kane and challenge him to a match at Backlash, right? It's fucking Kane, motherfucks. He's the former champion, let's say, right? But furthermore, it's Kane. Like, there's no doubt in my mind that Kane would destroy, Jerry Lawler, right? There's no doubt in my mind that Kane would destroy Gunther or Pat McAfee or basically anyone else in NXT or this entire company, like, in his prime. Like, Kane was just like a fucking monster of a human, right? Like, so what I'm getting at here is, like, it's because Gunther sucks so much that basically we are allowed to have situations where someone like Pat McAfee can't stand up to Gunther. Pat McAfee's like, I want to kick Gunther's ass. And it's like, you shouldn't even have this aspiration in your mind, right? Like, the show, and it's not like bad booking necessarily, it's just bad planning, right? The show should be as such where the announcer is like a Tom Phillips, right? And that instead of Gunther, you have someone like, at minimum, like a Randy Orton or like a Heidenreich. Remember when Heidenreich was going after Cole? Like, the idea being that, like, this guy is so far ahead of the game. He's so far ahead of the announcers that, like, it shouldn't even be a question. But anyways, that's how that went down, cuckolds. I didn't like this at all because Pat McAfee just spent 3 boring minutes putting himself over. And a lot of the stuff that he said is complete bullshit. Like, he's like, I work hard, right? And it's like, I'm sure you do, bro, but that's not why you're being given this opportunity. You're being given this opportunity because you came into WWE as being famous, right? I don't know why Pat McAfee is treated like a face, and like someone that earned it, but Logan Paul isn't. Even though Logan Paul is better than him in the ring and is more athletic and would beat his ass, right? That's another thing, about Logan Paul. He actually is somewhat believable. I'm not saying he's like believable in the sense that he can beat up like Mark Henry or Kane or someone like that, but he can sure as shit kick the hell out of like almost everybody on the roster. There's no doubt about it. He's like a real athlete. He actually does actual combat sports. Oh, all his fights are fixed. Believe me, the hater has done boxing for a significant amount of time, and I can tell you right now, Logan Paul, he's all right. Jake Paul is a great boxer, but people have never fought in their lives. They just watch Joe Rogan, right? And they're like, he's not good. I heard somewhere he's not good. You know, my 350-pound Brazilian jiu-jitsu coach, like, have you ever been to like a BJJ class? It's like some fat Brazilian dude, right? It's just some fat fuck. And he's like, I'm going to teach you how to fight. It's like, shut the fuck up, bro. Like, I'm sure he's a good fighter, but it's like, you don't have the cardio to fight if you're that fat, you know, unless you're exceptional. And those guys are fat and like in their 50s, so I doubt it. But anyways, the point is, I really didn't like the segment at all. Pat McAfee said a bunch of curse words to make himself cool. It works because the crowd is dumb. After this, Aldous comes out. He makes the match Backlash. Then we got Uso and Sami Zayn talking. Uso says nothing to him. He says, whatever you do is the right choice, Us. And then Logan Paul just comes out and just punches him in the face, knocking him on his ass, right? Logan Paul is just like, he's so much more impressive looking than Jey Uso. It's like, I know, I keep fighting this, but, you know, people have this idea that Polynesians and Samoans specifically are supposed to be the toughest people in the world, even though there's absolutely zero evidence of this at all, right? But, like, anyone that knows anything about anything knows that if Logan Paul wanted to, he could knock out Jey Uso, Jimmy Uso, Sami Zayn, Seth Rollins, all these guys in about 3 seconds. You know what I mean? He would just punch them right in the face, and that'd be it. Like, if he wanted to hit Jey Uso for real, like, Jey Uso wouldn't get up for, like, 5 minutes. He'd have brain damage because his head would bounce off the concrete. But anyways, it's neither here nor there. Completely justified because he was super kicked before. After this, Rollins is out again. Sammy comes out. And basically, Sammy is staying on Raw, obviously, because he's not going to be intimidated. He has a match with Braun Breaker. Braun Breaker beats his ass, spears him like 1,000 times. The last spear, which was like the run around the ring spear, was brutal. That shit was like wild. Because when he hit him, like he moved Sami Zayn like 4 or 5 feet. You know, it was crazy. Like, even if Sami Zayn jumps backwards, that's just fucking impressive, man. Braun Breaker is just an athletic freak of nature. In my opinion, like I've said before, we haven't seen anyone like him in a long time. Since Lashley, basically, we haven't seen anyone that's even close. You know how like people like Shelton Benjamin and like Nathan Frazier get this like, wow, they're great athletes. Like, they're like, Braun Breaker is like a real athlete. I am shocked that this guy didn't make it to the NFL. It's just his height and his general size that's a detriment, because I don't see how this guy wouldn't be like a 5-star linebacker, you know? But it is what it is. It really puts into perspective how good like the aforementioned Luke Kuechly must have been. You know what I mean? Like, imagine if that guy came in here. But anyways, it is what it is. After the spear, they throw Sammy into the ring. Rollins curb stomps him. That's the end of that. So overall, the show, as you can tell by the fact that this review is now almost 40 minutes long, was actually rather enjoyable, but there were a few dark spots that, in my opinion, were horrible. So maybe I'll start doing this in every video. We have the negatives. -1, Lyra Valkyria talking. -2, motherfucks. You know what I'm saying? Sami Zayn being around. And, of course, -3, Pat McAfee. Some of the positives were Becky Lynch's promo was pretty good. Dominic's short but interesting and fun segment was good. And the best part of the night, in my opinion, was New Day on commentary. I really enjoyed this. I really hope they do something with New Day. You know, beyond just them being tag team champions and just holding the title for 8 months until the next flavor of the year comes by, right? Like, I want the tag team titles to matter again. You know, I want them to main event a pay-per-view or something, you know? Like, I want it to be interesting. The New Day is the team to do that, but I don't think they will allow them to. So, there you have it, cooks. With that being said, take care of yourselves and go fuck your mother.